Welcome to our show on the power of meditation with our special guest, Ronnie Newman. And before we start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ronnie and her illustrious credentials. So Ronnie Newman is a Harvard-trained researcher and published author in the field of mind-body medicine. She's also an award-winning scientist and educator who's spoken internationally for organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, the National Institutes of Mental Health, and numerous medical and nursing schools. She's been interviewed by Newsweek, by Yoga Journal. She's been quoted in U.S. News and World Report and Prevention Magazine, amongst others. She's also appeared on PBS, NBC, and CNN International, and was a featured scientist in the epic documentary, The Truth About Memory Loss, Reducing, Repairing, and Reversing the Signs of Alzheimer's and Dementia, which, by the way, I believe was viewed in something like 115 countries worldwide. And she's also the Director of Research and Health Promotion for the Art of Living Foundation and so much more. Welcome, Ronnie.
Thank you, Deborah. It's always a delight to share good information with you.
Well, I am so excited about today's interview because I just found out that you have been researching meditation for not just a few years, not just a few decades, but several decades. I mean, meditation now is just a household phenomenon.
Right.
What made you start researching meditation so many decades ago?
Well, actually, it was for myself. The reason was that I was not happy, I was depressed, and at the same time, I didn't realize I was depressed. I was just looking for what is full human potential. What is it that human beings as a species are entitled to live on this planet? Where is the joy? Where is the happiness? Where is the creativity? And when I heard that most people use 3 to 5% of their mental potential, I was blown away. I thought, what's the rest of the brain? It's not junk. Why aren't we using our full potential? So I started exploring meditation in order to see how to unfold full potential. And then, as I told you before, I come from a scientific family, and my parents were, how shall I say it, in the 70s, less than pleased with the fact that their daughter had taken up meditation. And so I thought, if I can just document the value of it and show them, then not only will they have peace, but they might actually do it themselves. So that's why I started as the dutiful daughter.
Well, that is fantastic. And I have also heard recently that you have done some really outstanding research with the team on depression and how meditation impacts depression. And depression is such an epidemic in our society right now.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I read recently that 1 in 6 adults in the US are on antidepressants, and the largest group being Caucasian females, which I think is just crazy. 1 in 6. And I would love to know a little bit about the research that was done by your team, because I know it was so outstanding that it was actually published in the British Journal of Psychiatry.
Yes. What we found was that when people had treatment as usual for depression, the success rate is less than ideal, to put it quite mildly. There are many people, a full third of all people who are treated with antidepressants don't respond, or they don't respond fully. And also they tend to be on depressants for years and years and years, switching from one to the other as the doctors nobly attempt to find the right calibration for them. Now, even when we find that drugs for depression work, what happens is that it blunts the suicidal ideation and the desperation and the loneliness that these people feel, but it does not increase their sense of well-being, their joy in life. It does not make them feel alive. And the reason for that is part of our human nervous system. We have an automatic nervous system called the autonomic nervous system that rules every organ and system in our body. And it's mostly automatic, which is why it's called autonomic. We don't control our perspiration, we don't control our saliva, we don't control our digestion or our heartbeat. These things are all automatic in our system. And there are two branches of that. One is the sympathetic And you can remember S for stress, S for sympathetic, and the stress mode of our body, the sympathetic part of the body, is overactive when people are depressed, which means that the other part of the autonomic nervous system, the peaceful, joyful, parasympathetic nervous system, is on low. So the stress response is high and the peace, joy response is low. And what antidepressants do is they blunt or calm down that stress response, but they don't increase the well-being response. So people feel numb, they don't feel fully alive. And what meditation does is, rather than simply blunting the stress response, it calms the stress response and it simultaneously boosts the well-being or the parasympathetic drive in the system. So people have joy, they have vitality, they have a true treatment, a true cure, they go into true remission. And so what we found in our study was that people who hadn't responded to standard of care, which was drugs and psychotherapy, they were randomized to either continue the gold standard, the best that the West could do, or we added a particular meditation practice. And what we found was that in the treatment as usual group, drugs and psychotherapy, at 6 months there was a 9% remission rate. 9% of the people after half a year were in remission. What we found when we added the meditation is it bumped up to 54%.
54%.
Right.
Well, I have a feeling that our viewers would like to know how they could learn more about this meditation. And I happen to have right here that they can go to sf.unveilinginfinity.org. sf.unveilinginfinity.org. So what you're saying is that meditation outperformed drug therapy.
Yes. Yes. Well, actually, to be a complete scientist, we wouldn't say it outperformed it. What we would say is that when we added it, that at that point, it totally boosted up, totally bumped up the results that came from this. And there are other studies that show its effect on meditation. But you know, the other thing about meditation is that it's much more than a stress management tool. It literally puts us on the fast track to being happy and productive by increasing the activity in those parts of the brain responsible for happiness and other positive emotions. Now, you see, as a species, we're wired to experience negative events more powerfully than positive events as a survival mechanism. You know, when you and I go to the ocean and we go for a swim, if we have a lovely day, you know, 10 years later, we're probably not going to remember that day. But if we're swimming in the ocean and we see a shark fin and we got to outswim that shark, we're going to really remember that, and we're going to remember not to go back to that beach. So we're wired, scientists have said that our brains are like Velcro, you know, that's sticky. Our brains are like Velcro for negativity, and like Teflon, it just falls right off for positivity. And is part of our survival mechanism. But what happens when people start to meditate is that begins to reverse itself, and the area of the brain responsible for happiness and positive emotions grows stronger, and that for negative emotions actually begins to wither. So we change the very structure of our brain.
That is very intriguing and very desirable.
And I want to say it happens really quickly. So if you're bummed that you haven't been meditating yet, don't be, because it's found that in as few as 4 weeks, people begin to experience these changes.
Well, there's another thing that a lot of people get bummed about, and that is that they think that meditation is very difficult. They say, oh, I've tried it before and I just can't do it. I can't concentrate.
Well, thank goodness, because meditation is not concentration. You know, meditation is a category, like transportation is a category. And there are way big differences between a canoe and a 747 or a rocket ship. And so depending on which vehicle you get into, that's how easy or hard your journey is. And the other thing to remember is that different meditations are for different purposes. Some are to increase focus, so those meditations will increase focus. Some meditations are to increase compassion, so it will increase compassion. However, there are some meditations which are absolutely effortless, which have a holistic influence on the entire mind-body complex. And that's incidentally the Unveiling Infinity that you mentioned. They will have the experience of that if they go. Because effortless meditation is very powerful, and there's no need to control the mind or concentrate or to apply vigilant attention to one's thoughts and environment. And I know that mindfulness meditation is very popular now, and the research shows it does have some benefit. It also shows that it's very difficult. and it takes people a long time to master. So I'm here to spread the good news that there are many meditation techniques that are effortless. And what you want to do, though, is you want to learn the meditation from a tradition rather than something a scientist like me developed in the lab. Because for some reason, the research has found that ancient meditations that are standardized, that are taught exactly the same way for thousands of years, like what we can learn here in an air-conditioned room in Berkeley is the same that somebody 5,000 years ago learned in a cave full of spiders and snakes in India. And we can do it in the comfort of our home if it's taught in exactly the same way. And there are these beautiful unbroken lineages, and those are the meditations that are most effective. And that's the meditation that we did this research on.
Fabulous. So it has withstood the test of time.
Absolutely.
You also have some intriguing research on the effects of meditation on stress, which is also epidemic in our society,
Right.
and anger, and so much so that it has become, I know that you live maybe 15 minutes away from Parkland,
Right.
where those shootings took place.
Right.
Look what's happening in our society as a
Right.
result of unchecked stress and anger.
Right.
How can meditation help that?
This is a $64,000 question, $64 billion question. So the first thing is just remember when I talked about the stressful sympathetic nervous system, that the stress response calms down automatically. It's not that people have to try to say, okay, I'm going to keep my stress under control, I'm not going to get angry, I'm not going to get upset. It happens automatically that the whole body becomes chemically supercharged to support calm, to support better reasoning, to support happiness, to support positivity. And what happens is, like water boils at 212. And so if the water's already at 210, you don't need to heat it too much before you get all the boiling. Well, it's the same with anger and frustration and stress in our system. So if you can bring the water down to freezing level or to comfortable room temperature, it takes a lot more to bring it to a boil than if something's right below the surface. And what we find is that stress, there's a chemical in the body called cortisol. It's the least popular hormone because it's called the stress hormone. And what we find with meditation is that the stress hormone cortisol begins to drop from the very first session, not taking months to master, not taking years to master, from the very first session. And at the same time, the well-being hormones begin to increase. So we're completely changing the playing field so that individuals are less stressed, their focus is wide, and stress becomes a downward spiral because when people are stressed and that fight or flight response kicks in, the whole awareness narrows, their mind narrows, their attention narrows, they can't concentrate as much, they don't problem solve as much, they're less creative, they tend to get fired, they don't get raises as well. And so it's a continual downward spiral of frustration and negativity, rather than what Fredrickson calls the upward spiral, where we go to more and more positivity, more and more positivity. So meditation automatically sets the stage for that positivity.
Okay, so you said that stress is not desirable, but what about those people who say, I can't perform without stress, I need stress to be effective?
That is a really good question because acute stress, like a short thing like when we're out swimming a shark, acute stress is life-affirming. It serves a purpose. Chronic stress, every day you go in and the deadlines are more than you can do and you're competing for a job promotion with somebody else and you're afraid they're going to make cuts in your department and your supervisor is a jerk and doesn't appreciate you. All of these things, that kind of chronic stress actually tears down the system. And what it does is it causes brain cells to actually shrink and decompose. So the space between our brain cells becomes so big that our brain cells can't communicate with each other. We have trouble learning, we have trouble problem solving, we have trouble innovating, we have trouble connecting with our peers. And so what's been found is that people who are relaxed and happy, a study that was published in the Harvard Business Review found that happy people, relaxed people, are 37% more productive, they earn more money, they get more promotions, they're more loyal to their companies, and they are sick less. They have less absenteeism due to illness and other issues. They also are greater team leaders, and if we're talking about stress, when we're stressed, our focus narrows. So we don't connect with other people. And as a species, we're wired to connect with each other. And when we connect with each other, it does things to our brain, like we talked about before. It does things to our brain that enable us to be more successful and productive. And the bottom line is that people will quit a job, no matter how good the money is, but they won't quit a team. And if your stress is under control with practices like meditation, and you can keep a team going, your whole team will flourish and the whole team moves together. And while it sounds like utopia, it really is, because the bottom line is that as a species, heaven on earth, or utopia, is the way that we progress the most. We earn more money with less stress and more happiness as we go.
And there's something else inherent in what you just said, and that is that increase in connection, I assume, would also improve intimate relationships.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Meditators, when people do these practices, their personal relationships flourish, both on the job and at home. Because the thing is that you want to do something that not only is going to allow you to be more productive on the job without costing you more time or energy, but also is going to allow you to recharge your batteries so that at the end of the day, you have time to connect with your partner, go for a hike, play with your kids, or do whatever brings meaning and joy to your life. This is a practice for life. Because success, when you say to somebody, oh, I'm successful at job, if you're so stressed and you're there so much that you come home and you eat a microwave meal in front of the TV and then you go to bed and you get up and do the same thing tomorrow, I would say that's not a successful person, no matter how much money you earn. And so what you want to do is have the great money with the great heart, with the great connection, and your health as well. And meditation is a key for that.
I thought of one other thing while you were saying that. After the microwave, then you go to sleep. Can meditation help people with sleep? Because I know a lot of people have that problem.
Absolutely, because part of the reason people don't sleep is worry. And the stress response keeps people active, and meditation calms that so that the sleep is deeper. There have been a lot of studies on improved quality of sleep with meditation. Absolutely. The sleep is deeper. You know, the rejuvenating sleep is stage 3 and stage 4. There's 4 stages of sleep. And we spend just a small percentage of our time in that deepest sleep. And people who worry and are stressed, they rarely get to those deeper levels so that they don't have that rejuvenating sleep. And even if they've been in bed for 8 hours, they wake up not necessarily feeling refreshed. We've all had days like that. Whereas meditation lets you dive deep into, even when we teach in the prisons, the prisoners say, I had the first night's sleep since I've been in prison. And if they can get a night's sleep in a penitentiary, we can get a sleep in our, our Serta beds at home.
Thank you. Here is another $100,000 question. Right now, a lot of us feel a little bit helpless. We see world events and we think, what can one individual do? It sounds like meditation is very effective to reduce our own stress and to make our lives happier and more fulfilled and on that upward spiral. Have you seen any research, or can you comment on perhaps our meditating might have an effect on the world?
Oh, absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is, we know how we say, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Well, there's an amazing discovery. It's one of my favorite discoveries in science. It's called mirror neuron systems. You know, a mirror like you look at a mirror. So what was discovered, some scientists were in a lab and they had electrodes in the brain of a monkey, rhesus macaque monkey. And they were looking to map out where different functions are in the monkey's brain, because they're our supposed closest relative. And so the scientist came in late with his lunch, like people in every profession do, and he sat down probably just twice the distance that you are from me, and he started eating his sandwich. And after a while, he noticed that every time he would bring his sandwich to his mouth, what would happen is that the area for the motor movement of the monkey would light up. And to the point that if he held a cup that had a lot of liquid in it, you know, it's heavier, so it uses more effort than if a cup is empty. And so when he took the first sip, more neurons lit up than when he took the lighter sip toward the end of it. And so they noticed that when you are connected with somebody, when you're locked in, like you and I are, and you're attending to somebody, that our brains are really part of a greater brain, that we're locked into. It's like neural Wi-Fi. And so we're locked into each other. And while monkeys have mirror neurons, it's one neuron for this and one neuron for this, because we have a more sophisticated intellect. We have mirror neuron systems, and what's been found is that our emotions are contagious, just like a cold is contagious. So the first thing is that when we have positive emotions, you know how there are certain people you just love to be around them? And it's because they're affecting your brain. They're absolutely affecting your brain, and so that area of joy, enthusiasm in your brain lights up the same as theirs. And while it's great to be around upbeat people that you adore, when there are really negative people, that also catches. And that can be part of like gang violence and, you know, mass mob hysteria and all of that, because while it's great to catch positivity, as I said, to catch negativity is very damaging. And there's something else when you talked about this, and this is where science shines. Because the whole purpose of, I have to just give a little like disclaimer first, because it sounds so amazing, and it's like God only wishes this is true, that the human consciousness, the human awareness is a field. Just like there's a magnetic field and a gravitational field, it turns out that human consciousness has a field effect. Just like the television signals are picked up elsewhere, our brainwave patterns are picked up, our coherence and the calm in us is picked up elsewhere. And so when I was at Harvard, this was some of the research that I was doing, was, is human consciousness a field, and what effect does it have? And what's been found is that when 1% of a population meditates together, it produces this great wave of coherence in the collective consciousness, and violence comes down, accidents come down, sickness rates come down to an alarming degree. There was a remarkable degree. There was a study, there was a demonstration project done in Washington, D.C. in the 90s when the highest rates of, it was, you know, the worst city in America. And there's an FBI statistic, a crime statistic called HRA, which doesn't stand for Human Rights Amendments. It stands for homicides, rapes, and aggression. And what was found is, using the FBI uniform crime statistics, that every time that critical mass was reached and that coherence was created in the field, that violence dropped, crime dropped, accident rates, sickness rates, even natural disasters dropped. Everything dropped. And while it sounds remarkable, this is, as I start to say, the value of science, because science takes us from our preconceived narrow borders and opens them, just like the discovery that, in fact, the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. I mean, you know how hard that was to document? And so, but with science, we are able to expand our boundaries. The same with germs. The doctor who discovered germs was so ostracized that he ended up going insane. And now we know through science that, yes, there are germs, but then the concept that something invisible can make somebody die was considered ridiculous. It was a very mechanistic thing. And so what science has discovered, there have been over 17 studies over and over and over again on this 1% effect. And what's been found in research is that the probability of getting this result by accident is 1 in 500 million. You would have to do this experiment 500 million times to see this result, which has been replicated over and over and over again.
Well, this is so exciting, and I think it's very exciting to me. I think it's probably exciting to everybody listening, that not only can we improve our own lives, reduce our stress, get rid of depression, and uplift our happiness level, but we can also have an effect on the field, which is the rest of creation. So thank you so much for your brilliance, for the insight that you shared with us, and for all of the research that you're doing on meditation so that the rest of us can benefit from it.
It's totally my honor to be able to do that.
And I'm very excited to share that on the 21st and 22nd of July, this Unveiling Infinity course is taking place at the San Jose Convention Center. And I'm also very excited to share that it's going to be led by Sri Ravi Shankar, who is one of the greatest living spiritual masters on the planet today. And he's going to be there in person, and people will be able to experience this meditation. And again, the URL is sf.unveilinginfinity.org. So I'm going to be there. And thank you so much for everything that you shared today. Is there anything else that you want to say before we say goodbye?
Just that I believe that this is the single most important thing anybody can do to reach their goal. Whether you're looking to increase your own happiness, increase the use of your own brain, preserve your brain, because the other thing is it's been found that meditation can slow, stall, and even reverse the deterioration that happens with the brain, because by the time we're at least our age, people, like the human brain starts to atrophy, which means shrink, by the time people reach 26, 27, and by the time people reach 40...
Which is what we are now.
Right, which is what we are now. And by the time people reach 40, the human brain atrophies at 5% per decade. Now, while that's the common trait, it's not biologically inevitable. And multiple research studies around the globe have been shown that meditation actually begins to help people grow a bigger brain. So it can slow, stall, and even reverse age-related brain degeneration. And no matter what we do in life, whether it's sharing intimate moments with your family, like my mother is 94, we meditate together, and she's still as sharp as a tack. It's the best thing you can do for that. And even if you just want to be more productive at work, there was research has found, you know, the type A personality, like we're not, but you know, the type A personality is very driven and gets a lot done. Well, those people often pay with their health. People in Silicon Valley, you know, you look at the high levels of stress, these people make tremendous amounts of money, but it takes a price out of their health, and then they spend half of their wealth trying to regain their health. What's been found when people meditate is they have that type A success, but with a type B physiology, that relaxed, you know, mañana, artistic, all is right with the world physiology. So they enjoy life more, they have more promotions, they do better. And so there's no need to pay unnecessary prices for this precious body that we've been given. And meditation is the greatest key. And being able to meditate in a group like that, where it's more effortless, with somebody from a lineage like that, it's like the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yes, and I agree. And I have to say, Ronnie, you had me with more happiness and less stress, but slowing down the aging process and increasing brain clarity and productivity, that is the frosting on the cake. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing to bring this knowledge out to the world.
It's totally my pleasure.
And this is the time for, and people are looking for an effective meditation technique, one that isn't strenuous, that doesn't involve some kind of, you know, intense concentration that they can't do, but something that's effortless. Right. And what an opportunity, as you said, to learn it with a
expert, world authority
on meditation, Sri Ravi Shankar, right here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, no snakes in the cave.
No snakes or spiders in a cave. So thank you so much.
Thank you.